Welcome to your Falmouth Community Media Center. Hi, I'm Jay Zavala, and you know we're going to have a great show because today my co-host is none other than local author and pundit, Troy Clarkson. Troy, we got a great show ahead of us,
Jay,
right?
always great to be with you, especially on a day like today when we celebrate community media. That is, the people in our community that get the message of free speech out to the people in Falmouth every day through their own efforts. And it's wonderful to be able to celebrate that.
This is our third annual Community Media Day, correct? And it's right at the beginning of a full week of Free Speech Week as well. So it gives us a lot to review, see what FCTV is doing, its share, its part in bringing free speech and getting the public to participate in America's greatest exercise.
No question about it. So we have some remarks here. Community Media Day is an annual celebration of voices that bring awareness to the importance of free speech and accessible media for all individuals to have their voices heard. It was found in Brooklyn, New York, but it's celebrated all throughout the world by anyone who wants to ensure that the media landscape remains inclusive for all artists across all forms of media. So today, around the world, like we're doing here in Falmouth, people are celebrating their ability to share their thoughts, to freely share their voice. And that's something that's just so important. You know, I remember when FCTV started broadcasting in Falmouth. I was then on the Board of Selectmen, and it was more than 20 years ago. And Bob Henricks, one of the pioneers in community media in Falmouth, God rest his soul, would come into the basement of Town Hall and record the selectmen's meetings, and then they would be replayed. But that was the beginning of this amazing effort here at FCTV for all kinds of voices across the political spectrum, across cultural and economic spectra, for anyone who has a voice that they want to be heard, to be able to be heard. And it's an amazing celebration, really, of free speech.
So you mentioned one of my mentors here at FCTV. Bob, of course, is one of the first fellows that reached out, took me by the hand and said, this is where we plug things in and get things started. So FCTV is actually celebrating with an open house today. Earlier we had tours of the new facility, as well as demonstrations, all of the new cool and outstanding equipment and tools that we now have to play with. Members and volunteers can now take full advantage of them. And it's also, as I said, the beginning of Free Speech Week. And this is a yearly event to raise public awareness of the importance of freedom of speech and of the press in our democracy, and to celebrate that freedom. As freedom of speech and of the presses are rights of all Americans to share, this nonpartisan, non-ideological event is intended to be a unifying celebration.
A really important part of free speech, obviously, is the ability of community media to show unfiltered access to the deliberations of our community's leaders. And so we're thrilled to have one of them here in studio with us today, Sue Moran. And in a minute, after we see a video that's been prepared, we'll talk about a proclamation that the Board of Selectmen prepared that really demonstrates their commitment to free speech and community media.
I remember reading the proclamation. I counted 9 whereases. So you know it's going to be an interesting one to share, by all means.
Absolutely. But first, why don't we do this as our first celebration?
Before we continue, I just got a notice that we have to break for...
I think we're going to break for the video,
For
Jay.
the video,
yeah,
that's it.
So we'll go on, and today what you'll see is a series of videos produced by FCTV members, and throughout the next couple of hours live here from the new Community Media Center here at FCTV, we will see the handiwork of our volunteers. So our first video is over Falmouth and Woods Hole, and it's produced by FCTV member John Mortensen, and it celebrates the wonderful activities of the Woods Hole Film Festival. So let's have a look.
Welcome to the charming Cape Cod village of Woods Hole. This tiny seaside community is not only a popular stop for summer visitors on their way to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, but is also home to several world-famous scientific research institutions such as the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and the Marine Biological Lab. And since 1991, Woods Hole has been the host of the Woods Hole Film Festival. The festival's mission is to showcase the work of independent filmmakers from across the globe, especially those with a relationship to Cape Cod.
This is a pretty amazing place to have a festival. I mean, in the heart of summer, to be on Cape Cod, I couldn't have, you can't pick a better environment than Woods Hole for a festival like this. You have great audiences, great support, great staff. This has been a pleasure.
What I love about the Woods Hole Film Festival is that there's such variety here. If you like one thing, one type of film, it's probably going to be here.
Yeah, it's quirky, it's fun, but most of the times it's super interesting and it's usually a deep dive into somebody's life that's done something important that we wouldn't really learn about otherwise.
It's different than anything you'd see anywhere else. And a lot of the movie theaters that used to show independent films or different kinds of films are closed. So many films are blockbusters, and I enjoy those too, but this is really much more interesting.
We watched the one about the pollinators, and it was like, I want all the kids to see this, to understand the role of bees. It was so well done, and it was so insightful, and halfway through it you get so depressed as they're giving you the facts, and then they start talking to farmers who are saying, okay, there's another way of doing this. This is what we're doing, and this is how it's working for us. And it was just inspiring.
I love that people get to show their stuff. It's almost like supporting a small business, that people who have things to say and some subjects that we don't see in other films, and that we get to see these things, and that we're just supporting. I once saw a film made by a whole family. It was like such an intimate affair. It was so nice.
Well, they're just interesting films that otherwise many people wouldn't see weren't out for film festivals, I think. Just interesting perspectives.
I love having the filmmakers and the producers here and to talk to them and to listen to what they did, especially after you see the film, you just wonder how they did it.
My debut feature film, Spiral Farm, is starting in about 20 minutes, and I'm very excited to be here and watch the film with this audience. I love that there's audience engagement and that there's a vibrant community here that seems to appreciate film, and that people take the time to not go to the beach and instead come watch movies. And it's oftentimes our only opportunity to have the film screening in front of audiences, especially now with streaming platforms being the main way that a lot of people watch content. So it sort of ups the importance of film festivals even more.
Because we have independent filmmakers, we really have a kind of interesting sense of what people are thinking, what's churning in the film environment. And I find it often much more interesting, but I think it's essential.
So this for me is a great opportunity to just see some films that are just beautifully made and really special.
I just like films in general, and it's really nice to have them right on our doorstep, and small films and shorts and films you wouldn't necessarily see at big theaters.
In a day and age where the studios are drifting more and more to just big tentpole productions, if you're going to have small dramas, if you're going to have those intimate stories that maybe we were more accustomed to seeing in the 70s and 80s, if you want those things to still survive, independent film's the place where it happens.
And this film festival has, got a lot of history and a lot of momentum, and so we benefit, as residents of this, great project that was started 2.5 decades ago. So it's a joy, and then just to be able to walk down the street and this is home. Yeah, there the drawbridge is going up. Yeah, this is a great little village with this amazing film festival that is sort of out of scale for such a small village and a small community.
If you're interested in attending, supporting, or showing your work, visit woodsholefilmfestival.org.
Well, that was a very interesting short clip, a good demonstration of what a producer can do here at FCTV, sharing information not only about what's going on in the broader community, but focusing on, in this instance, Woods Hole. I think John Mortensen did an excellent job in producing that piece. That and others we'll be sharing with you as we go along. Troy, what did you make of that?
Well, I think you're right, Jay. It goes to the heart of what community media is, and that's why it's really great to have one of our elected leaders here in the studio live with us, Sue Moran, because the Board of Selectmen in particular, as the executive leaders here in town, have supported FCTV for a generation now. And Sue, it's great to have you, and thank you for being here. And you guys put together a proclamation proclaiming today Community Media Day. Tell us a little bit about your commitment to community media here in Falmouth.
Sure. Well, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'm delighted to be here, and thanks to both Troy and Jay for volunteering and putting so much of their talent into community media. When we look at opportunities in what I do, local government, to be able to sit in your living room and watch, sometimes basically live, or whether it's an election result, whether it's a Board of Selectmen meeting, a planning meeting, something that you may be interested in. You might be out of state, you might be traveling, and you can still tune in and see just what's going on. And this is one of my favorite things to tout, because it's also important with students. So for folks to grow up and realize it's sort of, one opinion, one vote, you do matter. Kids, high schoolers, young kids learn a lot at FCTV about communication. They can publicize some of their work, some of their interests, and it goes right back. I grew up at a public radio station, in a sense. My dad did the sound for WGBH. So as a very young child, I got a studio, taste to see all walks of life, and how, in a studio production, many folks could learn and get exposed to something that otherwise very few could. And I know, the rest of the Board of Selectmen has made tremendous efforts at outreach, and if we didn't have FCTV at our meetings, at the community outreach, where we're looking for public opinion, or we're running a meeting and trying to give as many people as possible an opportunity to speak. If you speak at the public comment period, for example, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, that message goes home through FCTV throughout the entire town. So we like to give that as an opportunity to interact with the Board of Selectmen.
That's the beauty of accessible media. It makes it possible for everyone's voice to be heard. That's the key. And of course, the other beautiful portion of it is that we can create it and bring it to you. Every producer, every director, every cameraman, everyone that volunteers and is a member here has an opportunity to put a program together, share their views, their thoughts, and you can do so as well. And come on in, right?
And one of the things about that is we're modeling also listening, because what's important about community media and free speech, the absolute other half of that that's equally important is listening. If you're not able to let the other person have their opinion and communicate it, you're not learning. You're not really improving your ability to communicate. You're not getting that person's really smart ideas or that person's really important criticism. So the fact that this comes, sort of aligns with free speech, I think is just tremendously important for now, just with everything going on in the world, and also for our kids growing up, to really model that sort of, taking turns in speech as we are today.
It's interesting how this all comes together. I know myself as a child, in our home, we were taught that free speech was a very important aspect of the way that we communicated. But we were also taught that silence was more than just the absence of sound. There were times when it was very wise to be a listener, right? The free speech, we were always urged and encouraged to express our opinions. So we have another clip coming up, or what do we have now, I believe?
Yes, there's another video, Jay.
Yeah, belonging to each other. This one is produced by Bob Fenstermaker. He's the director here of operations.
And are we cutting right now? I did want to mention the Selectmen's listening sessions as being part of the communication, the free speech, and that many times when there's a program introduced, we wait until there's an opportunity for folks all around, you know, whether they be at home or have a time to come to the meeting or can email in their opinions as well.
And we thank you, Sue, not only for joining us today to share in this celebration of free speech, but for the work that you do and that your board does in advocating for free speech and active listening. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Placing shellfish in Little Pond here, which is located on the other side of Bristol Beach, because we want to improve the water quality in Little Pond, which we've already done over the last number of years through the use of shellfish. So we will set up stations like we did last week to fill the bags. There's only today about 240, 250 bags we want to get out. Last week we pushed, I think, over about 400 last week. A lot of our work is done with volunteers, students, members of the community who just come out and love to be involved. We work real closely with these different groups, and we're so fortunate to have all of them.
They give you a lot of education, and you're growing. And, you know, regardless of your age, you have to grow. And working with young people, you tend to be more vibrant and enjoy life a little bit, as far as I'm concerned.
Bucket. Those can go right in here. There you are. Thank you very much. So what we're doing right now is we're getting the associated weights with each upweller so that we know exactly where to stock them at, what weights to stock them at. We're trying to stock them at a density of 400 per bag. And so what we do is we go in and we take individual samples from each upweller and then weigh those individual samples so the known weights are then calculated, so we're able to go ahead and distribute into each bag that appropriate weight. So we're going to stock this at a density of 276. So we got a good measurement there. Next thing we're going to do is start to remove these silos.
Today we have an impressive volunteer crew as well as our crew of student interns and seasonal staff members. We are deploying our first year oysters that have been growing in Falmouth Inner Harbor since about mid-June.
How many buckets should we put in each tub? Like 4? Just so they're not too heavy, guys.
We are staging our bags here. They're going to go out to our Little Pond farm right in the water right offshore, where they will sit in our floating oyster bags until about mid-October. We are weighing about 400 animals out per bag to control our stocking densities to make sure our bags roughly have about the same number of animals. This makes it a little bit easier on the other end when we go to move our animals out. It keeps our bags from getting too heavy and it keeps our animals growing beautifully.
We're going to need 2 runners. We need 2 people filling right here. You're going to be going this way. We'll go through your function in a minute. We're going to need a second person for putting tops on. Bernie, do you want to be a runner? Want to be a filler? Brendan, you want to be a runner on this side? You're going to work your way down. You want to start right over here. You're going to be going this way. Do you want to do it? Okay, come on over. And I'm going to show you what we're looking for here. 276 is roughly going to look like this.
My husband and I decided to volunteer for the Shellfish Commission because we went to the LaQuote open house and we learned all about oystering. And they were so welcoming and there was a lot of volunteer opportunities, and I thought this is something my husband and I could do
together.
This is one of the only nitrogen solution problems that actually provides a benefit beyond just hard sewering. If you think of what it costs to put in one sewer, with that amount of money, we can grow millions of pieces of shellfish which go out into the wild resource. We weigh all the shellfish when we're done in Little Pond and then move them to a secondary location, either in East Falmouth or West Falmouth, where the animals continue to grow. They are weighed again at the end of their secondary growing period, and then the animals are put out for harvest in East Falmouth or West Falmouth. People ask, if you can't shellfish in Little Pond, how can you eat the shellfish afterward if they're in another pond? So those animals have the ability to match the water quality. So if we replace them into a water body which meets the state and local standards to be open to shellfishing, then the shellfish that are put in there in rapid time go ahead and assume that water quality that is in that pond. So at the end of it, if you're a resident, you can purchase a shellfish license. If you're a senior, you can purchase a license for $6 and literally get oysters well through Christmas.
I shellfish, and this time of year I get mostly quahogs, and I can get steamer clams once in a while. And in the fall and wintertime, we do basic oysters.
So clearly we didn't see the clip belonging to each other. That was in fact Oysters in Little Pond, and it was produced by one of FCTV's members, Mary Kate Shea, and she's here to share some thoughts with us. Hi, Mary Kate.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I understand you're still a relatively new member of FCTV.
I am. I joined in, I think it was March, either February or March of last year. I have a background in television, and I've lived in Falmouth for about 5 years, and I thought, it's about time I did a little community service here, and so always nice to already have some skills that I can bring to
Absolutely.
the table.
Well, beautifully done. So you filmed and edited.
I did. So I
the
don't
piece.
have a background in camera, because in the days I grew up in television, everyone had their own jobs. And now they're one-man bands. And so I haven't spent much time behind a camera, and I was able to come to FCTV and get trained by Andrew, who taught me well. And I've gotten some feedback, some constructive criticism when I'm out there in the field and showing him the material. And I think I can get better and better that way. And I love doing it. I love, since I've been an editor for so long, I've taken other people's shots and put them together.
Sure.
So it's a lot of fun for me to get behind a camera and
so
get
what
a
is your
story.
take on this new facility and all of the wonderful new tools and equipment?
It's wonderful. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I worked for some news stations. I was an editor in the Boston news stations for a while, and when I came in here, I was like, my gosh, this place is just like those places.
So what are you working on now?
I'm not working on anything now, really. I was just away for 3 weeks on a
So that
long
makes
trip.
you available for other producers to knock on your door and,
yes.
and either gain some knowledge from your experience.
Well, I think it might be nice for people who are who do the interview shows here, if they wanted to do a piece before interviewing someone, or they're talking about something in particular and they wanted to have like a roll-in, then maybe they could approach me and we could talk about maybe working together and doing something like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So as a relative newcomer to FCTV and someone who's been here in Falmouth for 5 years or so now, what has it meant to you to have an organization like FCTV? I mean, on this Community Media Day, when we celebrate folks like you who produce local programming, what does it mean to you to be able to have this tool?
Well, it's fantastic to be able to, I mean, the pieces I've done are more human interest, so I haven't really dug into something that's close to my heart, but maybe that'll come. But to be able to have a place where one can do that and then have it seen by people, and it's such a gift, and you know, that's what I think you know, community television is all about.
Couldn't agree more. The piece that we just watched, it was a piece about volunteers in the community.
Yeah.
So as a volunteer producer, you were able to tell a story and show wonderful volunteers, not only helping to propagate shellfish, but to reduce nitrogen in Little Pond, and so many important public policy interviews intertwined in that short piece that really celebrates who we are as a community.
Yes, yes, yes. And actually, I'm a volunteer with the Shellfish Commission, too, and I'm going tomorrow morning to Waquoit Bay, where we are going to take the 2-year oysters out and weigh them, and then they bring them over to West Falmouth.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
So you have a direct interest not only in what FCTV is doing, but what you're recording as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay,
so tell us about the piece we're going to see in a minute. It's called Operation Flags.
Operation Flags for Vets. So I had gone out to the Bourne National Cemetery after there were flags put out a couple of years ago, and I thought it was just so beautiful. And so I heard a story about that well, you'll hear on the piece what the story was, but I just thought that would be really fun to shoot and do a story about, and so I went out and did that, and that was the first piece I did here.
That's great. So let's take a look at Mary Kate's piece, Operation Flags.
This is a holiday that honors those who died while in service. We honor all of these young men and women for their sacrifices protecting our freedoms. They died because they believed in America, they believed in the freedoms that we have. We now can worship anywhere we want. We can say what we will. We can put in print what we want. A gathering like this in some countries would bring the military in with weapons to disperse us. We are free because of these young men and women.
Sing, can you see by the dawn's early light one so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the pale morning sky.
For those who are most profoundly affected by the tragedies that come with serving our country, preserving our freedom and our democracy, for them any day is probably another Memorial Day.
My son was killed in June 2006, and he was buried here. In November of 2006, I came down to put a flag on his grave as it was Veterans Day, and there were no flags anywhere in the cemetery. There were 56,000 people buried here, and none of them had a flag. And they said, we don't allow flags in the cemetery because it interferes with the maintenance. That didn't sit well at all. So I began to contact veterans groups. I talked to military people, including the Secretary of Defense. I talked to politicians, and after 4.5 years trying, I finally got permission, provided that we buy all the flags, we put them in the ground, we take them out, and we store them. They were willing to let me put a flag on my son's grave. I was not happy with that because my son would have been enraged. All of these people here were his fellow soldiers. He would rather they all have a flag than he have a flag. So for me, it was all or nothing.
I'm first cousins with Jared T. Monte, and this is personal flags for family members who want to place flags on family members who are buried in the Bourne National Cemetery.
I'm going to be putting a flag on my grandfather's grave, Charles Gerrier. He was a veteran of World War II.
I'm taking a flag to Charles Fuller, World War II veteran.
I've been here 3 years and I'm going to put a flag on my grandpa's
I'm here with my wife and our friends and our children, and we're going to be helping place flags at all of the graves here. My father-in-law is buried here, is a Korean War veteran, and we've been doing this for about 10 years now. We started with the Cub Scouts, and it's just a great way to give back to the people that serve this great country.
I've been here for many, many years. I'm a volunteer here at the cemetery on at least one day a week, and I get to greet people who are coming in for funeral services, or they're trying to locate a relative, and so we can help them do that. And it's nice to see all these people turn out to honor those who have served and given their all for our country and their relatives. So it's very special.
This is the third year myself and the boys come down, plant the flag. It's a good lesson to teach them. Freedom really isn't free.
Whoever served in the U.S. Army, military, or Coast Guard, whatever branch of the military, I am extremely proud.
We were cleaning off the graves and planting the flags, and it just makes me really proud.
My oldest son is a surviving twin, and his brother and my son is buried down at the Section D. We come and say hi.
My name is Mary, and I was 99 years old in March. John has been dead 23 years. This February this year was my 76th wedding anniversary. My kids bring me down here to the cemetery. He knows that we are here, praying for him and loving him, missing him mostly, and he knows that we're with him.
Your presence here, your commitment to this, is a big statement, and I know I speak for everyone who's had a chance to be part of this great democracy one way or another when I say thank you for your presence and your commitment to those who've paid the debt that makes it possible for the rest of us to be part of this great experiment called America. So thank you for that.
That our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
56,000 service members who served their country honorably buried at the Massachusetts National Cemetery, and volunteers just wanting to give back, placing flags at each of those markers. That's amazing. And all volunteers, and that's what we celebrate today. Here at FCTV, we celebrate volunteers that come here and help tell those stories. If not for volunteers at FCTV and producers like Mary Kate, we wouldn't be able to share and both the joy, the sadness, and the remembrance that that video showed us. That was pretty amazing, Jay.
It was absolutely amazing. You know, Troy, the entire topic of free speech comes down to what is Article 1 of the Bill of Rights. And flag burning is an example of symbolic speech that is protected under the First Amendment. And unfortunately, burning of the flag is also permitted. But that just goes to show you that the subject itself is fraught with discussion. Yes, so let's...
Well, because that's a really good point, because there are forms of free speech that some people may not agree with. There are ways in which free speech is delivered that we may not agree with. But one of the things that Community Media Day is all about, and that FCTV celebrates with every show, with every minute of airtime, is just that. Our ability to capture the message of a broad spectrum of views and a broad spectrum of people, and be able to bring those messages to the homes here in Falmouth. And one of the volunteers that's been doing that the longest one of the people affiliated with FCTV that for over 2 decades has had a commitment to bringing those messages to the people of Falmouth is Barbara Canelopoulos, and we're thrilled to have you here with us today, Barbara.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
I remember sitting in this building, but a different studio, the older studio with you,
Yes.
doing a weekly news show. That had to
Yes,
be
yes.
a dozen years ago or more.
It was, and I remember working with that wonderful Bob Hendricks, who, as you said earlier, a pioneer who really made government transparent to the people of Falmouth. It really is a special day today when we think about the importance of information and having people the liberty of speaking their pieces. As you said earlier, this is one of the primary roles of this Falmouth Community Television. It's to give people that sort of soapbox.
And you've been having conversations for years and years with people on varied topics and a variety of important issues, and everything from politics to human interest.
Right.
And it must have been fascinating for you to be able to capture that mosaic of Falmouth stories.
Yes, and I'm so lucky because my material is the community of Falmouth. And it's surprising that, I want to say, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, from making guitars that just sound beautifully, to those who are helping others, people who are in the medical profession, writers, people who are writing books or writing poetry, and very often running for office. So it gives them a platform. Given the kind of support I get from the staff, it really is. It's just a joy. It's an easy job for me, and I learned so much from all these people, which are just our neighbors in Falmouth.
So just a moment ago, we were talking with Mary Kate, who is just one of our newest members who joined last year. Barbara, you've been a member for some 21 years or so, and you're also on the board of directors here at FCTV. Tell us about your role in that capacity.
Well, one of the things that on the board of directors is we kind of have a look at the whole operation, what's going on, the sorts of changes that have been made. The most important thing we're doing right now is looking at fundraising, because as you know, this fantastic new studio is expensive, and we need lots of support to make sure that we always have cutting edge equipment. So that's a big part of the board of directors, to not only oversee the entire operation, but to make sure that everything proceeds nicely.
Well, this facility and staff actually support 3 television stations. There's channel 13, 14, and 15, and I think that's where the acronym for PEG comes into play. It's for public, it's for education, and for government coverage, right?
My show is on channel 13, which is public television for everyone, and I have all the freedom to have any guest who's interested in coming onto the program. And Falmouth is replete with people who have something to say and eager to say it.
Indeed. I have been thrilled to be a guest, Barbara, on your show, and as we talked about a few minutes ago, to have done a news show together years ago, and I love telling this story. If during this show I use proper grammar, then you can thank Barbara Canelopoulos for that, because in addition to her long storied history as a television personality, she was also an educator for many years and was my 9th grade English teacher, and I still am grateful for her work as a fine educator.
Yes, I remember our conversations when you were a student about Oedipus Rex and Greek tragedy.
Right.
Right. You've come a long way, and I do follow your writing. I'm one of your faithful readers, and I never find a dangling participle or a misplaced comma.
Well,
You're doing
that's
well.
good to know. That's good to know. Well, we can share in the credit for that.
Yes.
Well, with a minute left, I also wanted to share with our audience that, like Troy, Susan and I found Barbara as one of the producers here when we first joined in. In fact, it was on a Sunday afternoon, and Susan asked me, she said, Jay, let's go on a date. And that day, we came to FCTV to learn how to make television. And not only was Bob Kendricks here, but Barbara was as well, and we had the privilege to be on one of your shows
Yes.
and see how you produced that as well. Barbara, thank you so much for coming in and visiting with us.
Yes, yes,
Appreciate
my
it.
pleasure.
And actually, I think our next video is one of Barbara's many pieces over the years, and it is from her show Conversations with Barbara Canelopoulos, and her guest on that show is longtime community volunteer Betsy Gladfelter.
And while welcome to Conversations with Barbara. I'm Barbara Canelopoulos, and my guest today is Betsy Gladfelter, who's here to fill us in on the details of the next stage of the Coonamessett River Restoration Project and to tell us more about what has already happened. So thank you so much for coming to the program and talking about this enormous and wonderful project.
Oh,
so
thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, we've come a long way. This is certainly great progress has been made, and you're looking forward to the whole other stage. Can you bring us up to date on what's been happening with the restoration project?
Okay. Well, let's just go back to when the project, as we're doing it, started, which was around 2010. And I like to use a phrase that a friend of mine uses about planting in Cape Cod. The first year, the plant sleeps. The second year, it creeps. The third year, it leaps. Well, in this case, we went from 2009 to about 2016 in the sleep, no, 2009 to maybe 2015 in the sleep phase. And then we began creeping. And then starting in October 2017, we began phase 1, and we completed that in about 4 months. So phase 1 is completed, and I'll explain what we do in these phases. And phase 2 will go out to bid in a couple of weeks.
So are we going to then be in the, say, run phase, the galloping?
Oh, we're in the galloping phase right now.
Galloping phase.
We're holding on.
Yeah.
We're holding the reins tight.
Yeah, that's great. It's just so exciting. And so the situation as it is right now.
So I just want to back up a little bit and say that the Coonamessett River itself, which we can see in the first slide, runs from Coonamessett Pond 5 miles to the ocean, and the last 2 miles is through Great Pond. And the project itself is the lower Coonamessett River Restoration Area, which is about a mile of 3 cranberry cells that just to the north of John Parker Road, where it crosses those cranberry areas, former cranberry areas, and then for 3/4 of a mile to the south of there. So the phase 1 is, and you'll see a picture a little later on, phase 1 we started getting grants for that in 2010. And I just want to point out, you'll see at the end, there are about 30 partners, but 2 very critical partners to this project were an organization called the Coonamessett River Trust, which started doing studies on the river in the early 2000s, and since 2004 have done river counts. Many volunteers have helped with that. Herring counts. And then for the last 4 years have tagged herring. So not only do we know.
That was another great example of a production. This one was done conversation with Barbara Kanalopoulos, and Betsy Gladfelder was her subject. So we're lucky to have with us the CEO and president of FCTV, Deb Rogers. Welcome, Deb.
Well, it's very good to be here with you today.
Well, let's talk about the events. We're celebrating not only Community Media Day, but this is the beginning of Free Speech Week as well. What's going on here at FCTV?
So before I start, I just want to thank you, Jay, and Troy, not only for hosting Community Media Day, but for all that you both do for FCTV throughout the year and all that you both do for the community. So I just want to take this moment to thank you both. It means a lot to be with you today. And I have put some thought into Community Media Day and Free Speech Week. And yesterday was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. And I went apple picking, so I was communing with nature. And while I was communing with nature, I was thinking about community media while I was tasting apples. So, I thought that we live in a time when we are more connected than ever before, right? But in some ways, we are also more isolated. And I also thought we have hundreds, if not thousands, of information sources coming at us every day. And how do you break through all that noise and find information that is relevant to you and to your everyday life? And that is what community media is about.
I love it.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? So as I was communing with the apples and tasting them, that's what really came to me, that there's so much coming at us. And if you're someone that has a message you want to get out, you're involved with a nonprofit or a community group, we provide that opportunity for you, and you've heard from some other people about how they got involved here and learned how to run cameras. So we give you that opportunity to learn how to make your own TV show and get information out, and so that people know what it is that you have to offer to the community. But we also produce programs, as you know, and so we are a place to discover your community, right? And information that's relevant to your everyday life.
Well, Deb, there are so many different layers to this, to the FCTV experience. Producing a show of whatever interest may be really starts with the education one gains and coming in and learning how to use it, the equipment, how to put a program together, how to produce it, and also how to work with others. It's a great way to get to know not only the community, but to put your ideas out there and have others share in that burden. I know very often when a show is being conceived and the notions of how are we going to do this, staff will work with us and actually bring in other members of the FCTV, and we work together to make these things happen. It's not one person, one individual, it's always a team effort, and I really like that part.
Right, and when you think about it, so not only are we putting out programs that entertain and educate and inform, but we're building relationships right here in our studio, right?
Absolutely.
So you and Troy, I believe, probably met here, and I certainly met you and Susan here. You had moved back here around the same time my husband and I moved, and we met a number of people through FCTV. So and then being involved in FCTV oftentimes leads to involvement in other things in our community that people start doing together.
Well, today's a great example of it. This is the first time I've actually focused on the subject of free speech. Right. I'd never done so before. I just assumed as an American it was my privilege, but I've never looked at the 27 amendments to the Constitution. I've never have zeroed in on the First Amendment, right. And certainly not to the extent that we have tonight. Enjoying what others are creating and sharing their information.
Right, and part of being a forum for the First Amendment also has to do with providing understanding of the vast responsibility of living in a society that has the First Amendment, right? So we are so fortunate that we live in a country where you can speak your mind, right? But with that comes this responsibility of understanding how to disseminate that information so that you know. And we start with kids very young here, and we work with adults as well, to teach them how do you disseminate that information? How do you know, not only how to be a receiver of information, which is important, right? And how to find out, how can I go further? How can I dig further and learn more about that? But also, how can I control media? And that's what we do.
You spoke at the beginning, Deb, about the fact that mostly social media is an almost unlimited source of information. One of the challenges of social media is that when you click on something, the way social media works is you get similar information from similar sources.
Right.
And right, so it automatically creates these silos and has partially led to the division and the tribalism that exists in our country and in our politics today. But community media is the exact opposite of that. It's raw, unfiltered, and a direct access to what your neighbors and your friends, or maybe your opponents, are thinking and feeling and talking about. And that is something really special that I think is foundational to a healthy society.
Right, and also it's learning what your government is doing, which impacts you. So when you're watching a selectmen's meeting, when you're watching town meeting, you are not just getting somebody's opinion. You are finding out factual information about how your life will be impacted. We were at a meeting, you were at the meeting as well the other day, where they were talking about the potential or the closing of the West Falmouth fire station. So what does that mean? What does that feel like for the people who live in that community? And they had this opportunity, the people that were there, to talk about how that felt and what it meant to them. And I think that it meant something too to the leaders of the community that were there presenting, to hear from everyone that was there about how they were feeling about these things. Where else do you get to actually do that without, where you have to be seen because you're in person? It's very easy on social media, and I love social media, but it's very easy to sort of hide behind that computer. It's not so easy to hide when you're on community television. You have to be respectful and you have to state your mind. But watching your government in action really engages you, really makes you an informed citizen, and I think it brings everybody much closer together. And I think it makes us realize that we are in so many ways more alike than not.
Well, it's clear that that's why the founders inscribed this as the First Amendment, right? Good basic freedom. So, Deb, thank you very much for coming in and sharing with us. We're going to go to another clip. Here we have two actually back to back. The first is Falmouth in Focus. It's a segment Triple E update, and it was produced by Jeff Wyman, who is the FCTV Government Access Coordinator. And that one will be followed up with the 2017 FCTV Volunteer of the Year video, which was produced by Chris Mullis.
I'm Scott McGann, the health agent for the town of Falmouth. Well, Triple E is a very serious illness. It was first discovered in humans back in the 1930s. It's named Eastern equine encephalitis because it was first found to be a disease that horses obtained. And there's been about 100 to 150 cases roughly since the 1930s. It's a cyclical basis, usually every sort of 8 to 10 years we get a sort of a round of Triple E. It's not been on the Cape, it's generally in Bristol County, Norfolk County, and through that area. This is the first year where we've detected any mosquitoes with Triple E. So Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project has the rights to treat as needed through a contract that's decades old with all the different towns on the Cape. So each district has its own mosquito control project. They're the experts. They're the ones that go out and treat the water bodies regardless of the year, whether the risk is high or not, or immediate risk or not for Triple E. They're always out there treating the water bodies and testing mosquitoes for West Nile and for Triple E. They have the authority to spray, but they generally will ask a town whether the town agrees to do some spraying. So for the first time on the Cape, they hit the threshold with testing enough mosquitoes to knowing that Triple E is around, that they requested that we should consider spraying. So I took that information to the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen to let them know whether they wanted to spray. And that area was basically where we're sitting down to Knobska Light. Down in that area was where we had the 4 positives. And the Board of Selectmen and Board of Health unanimously voted to do selective spraying in that area. And you know, since we've sprayed, we've had 1 positive up over here. Everything's been negative since. That was about 2 weeks ago. This last round from last week was all negative. So, you know, the spraying's hopefully helped knock the population down. And, you know, you do it that way and you hope for the best. Right now we're at moderate risk. We've been moderate risk from when we first detected mosquitoes in August. There's remote, which we usually are. There's low risk, moderate, high, and severe. So right now we're at moderate. We haven't changed. We will not go down. You don't go down once you get to a highest or whatever level you get to. You can only get to a more severe level. You can't go back down. So until the first frost, and the mosquitoes are considered knocked out. Now they are lower definitely in population with some of the cool nights we've had. But until the first frost, that risk is still considered moderate, and people should still take the precautions of not getting bit by mosquitoes, emptying standing water in their yards, checking their screens, and just taking the general precautions you would in August and September, in October until the first frost. Concerned citizens can call the Falmouth Health Department. It's 495-7485. Direct questions about maybe some stagnant water that they see or ponds, some concerns they have, they could call the Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project directly. If there's sort of specific concerns about treating something that maybe a neighbor has an old pool that's been abandoned and they really think it should have been treated, they can call the Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project directly, because that's all I'm going to do is call them for you, so you can also talk to them. You can call us or them and we'll get to the same point.
I mean, I did this stuff in college, you know, some 40 years ago as part of a minor for a degree, but, you know, kind of drifted away from it. But there was always this lingering interest, which is why I got involved when I retired here. And you know, to me, this is just great fun. When I got involved with FCTV, there was this online application for volunteers to be part of the Commodores. And it's through that I established the FCTV connection. And from that led to being my designated assignment during last year's season as FCTV Camera 3. So that was kind of fun. Got to do the home games, got to get out and you know, had a good time with it. I do the planning boards on Tuesday evenings and the zoning boards on Thursday evenings. And I participate in other projects such as the town meeting. Being part of the FCTV community and working in these productions, it gives me a better understanding of the details of what Falmouth as a town sees important. And it gives me the opportunity to be part of that information sharing between the issues and the people who make decisions with them. So in that regard, it has helped me to grow into this community and become proficient with and conversant in the issues that surround this town. It really didn't seem difficult at all to come in and introduce myself and become acquainted with others who had already worked here. In fact, everyone is very engaging to me. And I thought that was very good. I think I've established a few friendships here. So it's kind of made the FCTV experience very rewarding for me, and I look forward to continuing to do more of this as time goes on. It's fun, it really is.
And we're back. We are actually grateful to have the subject of that 2017 Volunteer of the Year video right here with us in studio. So to celebrate Community Media Day, we're happy to have with us Chris Smallis. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And so you've been a volunteer here with FCTV for a couple of years now. We were just chatting off camera. Your work started actually with covering the Falmouth Commodores.
Yes, it did. When Mary and I retired and came up here, we were looking for some things to do after we got over this vast expanse of being on extended vacation, when you go on and retire. Well, anyway, finally got to the point where I just had to find stuff to do. So I'm a big fan of baseball, always have been. So I started getting involved with the Commodores, finding out about them, and they had openings for what they call FCTV interns. And I said, well, great. I took radio and TV courses in college some 40 some odd years ago, and I said, might be nice to just get back and do this thing as a recreational type of thing. So one thing led to another. Became camera 3 with the Commodores home games, and then I started becoming more involved with a number of the other things that FCTV offers, especially Channel 15. I do the broadcast for the planning board on Tuesday nights and for the zoning board on Thursday nights. And I also do some studio work when they need help for that, and some other field projects, such as the last one I did was the National Night Out event that was held behind the police station. So to me, it's a good recreational thing to do. Kind of fun, really. And it also helped me get to learn a lot about the community that I've adopted now as my hometown. So.
Well, and that's so important. You get to see it up close. Deb Rogers, the CEO of FCTV, was in studio with us just before you, and she was talking about the importance of that, that community media brings unfiltered access to local government, to the decisions and the deliberations of government directly to the people. So what has it meant for you to have a front row seat to that in covering those meetings?
It has been very educational on one thing. I became spun up rather quickly on the issues that this town faces and goes and votes upon at town meetings and other special elections. So, but I would also like to say that the FCTV broadcasts that we do, especially the ones on Channel 15, are a very good complement to what you get in the Falmouth Enterprise. The Enterprise is a weekly publication. It's a print summation of what takes place at meetings, but the full content of the actual conversations and testimony and comments that take place, you get more of a perspective when you're actually seeing it. And FCTV does have a library of these programs, and it's a good ready reference, such that if you were to read something in the Enterprise, for example, and you wanted to find out more about it, you can access the video libraries so as to go back and either learn more in depth or to refresh yourself on any one particular issue.
So, Chris, you mentioned earlier that during your college days you had done some filming as well?
Yeah. When I got out of the Air Force in, what, 74? Way back then, another century. I went on the GI Bill to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and I thought I would have a career in communications studies. So I took some courses there, did some video production all on campus. And for a while, I was able to work in the field out in Berkshire County. Well, one thing led to another. I ended up actually going to a totally different line of work. In fact, over the time, I went back into civil service in defense acquisition. And my final assignment was at the Pentagon as a senior procurement analyst. And that pretty much capped 43 years of total federal and military service to the nation. So I decided, okay, fine, enough is enough. It's time to actually start enjoying the fruits of all this effort that I put in over these years. So we decided to come to Falmouth, and as I said before, I adopted it as my hometown. I had once served as a staff weather officer for the 102nd Fighter Wing when they used to fly out of Otis. And it was the best 4 years of my life here. So I decided we're going to come back here, and when I did, I was prepping for that by taking a number of sailing classes down in Annapolis. And when I came back up here, got the boat, and now I'm living the dream.
Living the dream. How would you characterize the difference between the equipment then and what you're using today?
Oh, it's far more advanced, far more advanced. And to some extent, it's easier to learn, and to other extents, it's a bit more difficult to learn, given the fact that there's more electronic technology embedded in the hardware today as opposed to what there was 40 years ago. But this has been a tremendous resource, I think, and for anyone who's ever thought about just getting involved in this kind of thing, don't be afraid to just come on in and ask. Take some of the classes, learn how to use the hardware. It's a wonderful experience. I've had a great time with it.
That's fantastic. So we're going to see a couple of the pieces that you've produced, including Sailing 101 and a segment on the National Night Out. Tell us quickly about the piece on sailing.
Sailing 101 is actually 9 episodes. What you're seeing is just going to be a piece, I believe, of episode 1. It's going to be all about parts of a sailboat, learning how to manage a boat, some of the basic fundamentals you should understand, plotting, navigation, that kind of thing. So that series will be completed sometime later this month. And the National Light Out piece that I did was at the request of FCTV Channel 15 to cover the community awareness event that Falmouth Police has. And it was really quite an enjoyable experience. Got a chance to tour the station, including the Emergency Response Center, a number of the facilities. It was really a very worthwhile experience to do.
Well, good. Well, we are grateful to have you in studio and to share some of your experiences with community media. And let's see Sailing Away with Chris Smollis, 2017 Volunteer of the Year.
Smollis, and this is Sailing 101. I'm putting together the series of videos to teach people about the basics of sailing, sailboats, and introducing people to the enjoyment of the sport. During this series, we will be talking about parts of a boat. We'll be talking about safety, navigation, tacking, jibing, crew overboard exercises, and a number of other things. What the series will be is essentially a video introduction to sailing. It's not meant to be a substitute for any sailing training course that you would take under the guidance of a certified instructor. Sailing, like driving a car, is an acquired skill. It's something you learn to do with practice and with education and training. Over time, you get better at it. Same is true with sailing. So during this series, we will be essentially introducing you to some basic concepts involving the sport. Now, to begin your journey in sailing, here are some texts that I recommend you read. Okay, the first book I want to show you is Chapman Piloting and Seamanship. The one I have before you is the 67th edition. This book is continually updated, by the way. This is considered the sailor's Bible, if you will. It's approximately 900 pages full of text that covers just about every conceivable topic associated with sailor. You will find that this is the text that is typically included with the purchase of a new boat by a lot of sailing manufacturers. A similar text is the Annapolis book of Seamanship by John Roosmanier. Although not quite as extensive as Chapman, it does cover many of the same basic topics and is a hardcover text that is often used by many.
We're celebrating tonight our annual National Night Out open house of the police department. Normally the National Night Out is held, it's usually held in August, but they also hold an event in October. And because of this year with the construction of the new senior center and the parking, we decided to hold it here in October. So this is the first time we've had it in October, and it's been wonderful. We've had a great turnout, and we even have a little fall theme going on. We've got some pumpkins and corn stalks, and we've even got cider and apple cider donuts. What it's all about is it's bringing the community together with the police department. So they get to see the police officer other than when they get called for a crime at their home or an accident. And it gives the officers also an opportunity just to talk to the community. And again, we don't just make it about the police department. You've seen the sheriff's departments here with their canines. They brought their command center. We also had, the sheriff also brought his boat. We also invite the fire department, so there's fire engines here. So again, and the DPW, of course, we know they brought a front end loader and a 10-wheeler. We're making it a true community event.
And really, it's all the vendors here. Everything you see that's here, all this food that's given out and everything, is all done by the community of Falmouth. We have restaurants, local restaurants, major restaurants, Papagino's, Supreme Pizza, Steve's Pizza, Jack and the Beanstalk, Smitty's Ice Cream, Eat Your Heart Out Catering. All this food here is all donated by these organizations to give out to the people. And all these vendors here over to the side are all from different agencies and banks and private companies all come here on their own time to just greet people from Falmouth and you know, have something to eat and break down those walls of communication. And that's what it's all about.
You know, it's just what I said. It's a community event. That's why the fire department's here, the DPW's here, and everything else. And again, we couldn't thank everybody, you know, for their time and donating everything. But again, it wouldn't get all together here if it wasn't for Sergeant Guthrie, as well as the other men and women of the Falmouth Police Department who are here tonight to assist.
Absolutely. I have a ton of officers here who help set all this stuff up, and each one of them have volunteered their time to be part of this community liaison group, and they're all out here just to be with the community.
So happy to have everybody here. Happy to have you here to you know, cover it, and we look forward to next year.
And we thank FCTV volunteer Chris Smollis for that wonderful look at the National Night Out. As Chief Dunn said on that video, it's a community event. And what we're doing here today, here live on FCTV, is also a community event celebrating Community Media Day, which is part of Free Speech Week, held today, October 20th, every year, and will be held every year going forward. So that's really important. If it's October 20th, you can turn on FCTV and you will see local people here in Falmouth sharing their stories and really celebrating the voices that community media provides. And Jay is going to introduce one of those voices to us.
I am very privileged, Troy, to introduce a good friend of mine, Adrienne Bauman. She is the current president of the Rotary Club, and she's going to talk about the partnerships that she has with other nonprofits. Adrienne, welcome to FCTV.
Hi, Jay. Hello, Troy. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is
great
exciting.
to see you.
Thank you. So what can I tell you
So
about
tell us
our
about your partnerships with other local nonprofits.
Well, the Rotary Club of Falmouth is itself a nonprofit, of course, part of Rotary International. And some of the things that we do is, our credo is service above self. So we look for opportunities within our community and within the global community to provide service to organizations who are in need. Whether it's volunteering, we have a philanthropic grant program where we provide some funding to other meritorious nonprofits. We provide volunteering at things like with Nobska Light, very much involved with VIPS, the Volunteers in Public Schools, and any other organizations that come about.
And how do you do that through FCTV?
Well, that's where this is a vehicle for us to get the word out about what we do, and also an opportunity for us to discover other nonprofits in the community that we may not have encountered yet. So it's a back and forth for us.
Falmouth Rotary has a long and storied history of supporting good works. That notion of service above self has really been embodied by many people over generations here in Falmouth, and I've been thrilled to be able to be involved in some of those efforts and through my column in the Enterprise to memorialize some of your great works. What are some of the highlights of your tenure with the Rotary Club and some of the things you've been able to do?
Well, I've been involved with the Rotary Club of Falmouth for only about 3 or 4 of its 90-something years in town, and my presidency has only been in its first quarter, let's say. But some of the recurring things that we get involved with, of course, are the students in the community. My son being a Falmouth Elementary School student as well. So we're heavily involved with VIPS. We're getting involved with a couple of new programs that they're just starting. We're involving ourselves with the Cape Kid Meals that's just getting started in the Falmouth schools, as well as a new program that's just kind of in the beta phase at North Falmouth. And that's bringing sort of our Rotary concepts of not just service above self, but for Rotarians, we live by what we call the 4-way test, which is of anything we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So those things are what we're bringing into this program that's, again, piloting, just getting started in North Falmouth School, and then hoping that we'll grow that to the other elementary schools in town. And it balances off of the Peace Builder program that they already have, but it's a volunteer, almost like an after-school club, if kids want to get involved with that. And then one of our Rotarians has brought a new concept that she's bringing into the high schools, which is a program for young women in their junior and senior years, getting ready to go off to college. And it's basically for teaching women just life skills, not managing your life, but ways to protect yourself, to recognize what may or may not be a good situation, and how to handle yourself in uncomfortable situations when you're branching out away from home for the first time. I know I didn't do that program justice, but there's a lot more to it. But again, that's something, as Rotary members come into our club, that they bring their passions and their gifts, that they can create new programs that benefit our community.
That's wonderful. And your meetings themselves actually, in some ways, perform a function similar to what FCTV does, because the speakers you bring in help illuminate issues, important issues in the community. And the members of the Rotary Club are all members of the business community in one way or another, and then they can fan out and share what they've learned at your meetings. And so you really perform a very critical function to get that word out.
Right, and inviting guest speakers. I think you've been a speaker before, as has Mr. Zavala. So by the organizations you might represent outside of your primary business would bring us the information we haven't heard yet from other nonprofits that are happening, and just provide us opportunities to say, hey, how can we work together? Or how can we support you? Or what can we get involved with? Or would you like to apply for a grant? Those types of things. So yeah, it's always gathering information from community resources like your column, like FCTV, to identify new opportunities and where we can provide help.
I know that monthly I enjoy that piece where you celebrate the student of the month.
Yes,
and it's always it's always in the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Adrian, thank you so much for coming in. We're going to show our audience a public service announcement that was produced by FCTV this fall, and it's an introduction to the Rotary.
Right, it's recognizing World Polio Day. So one of the main tenets that Rotary is working on globally is the eradication of polio. And
Wonderful.
World Polio Day is coming up this Thursday, the 24th.
Let's see it now.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hi, I'm Adrian, President of the Rotary Club of Falmouth. You've probably seen the Rotary International Mark of Excellence wheel on road signs throughout Cape Cod and pretty much everywhere else you go, on various community project placards, during disaster relief efforts, or maybe you've noticed it on lapel pins worn by Rotarians. But do you know what it represents, what Rotary is all about? Rotary members believe that we have a shared responsibility to take action on our world's most persistent issues. Our 35,000 plus clubs work together to promote peace, fight disease, provide clean water, sanitation and hygiene, save mothers and children, support education, and grow local economies. Rotary unites people from all continents and cultures who take action to deliver real long-term solutions. Together, we apply our professional experience and personal commitment to find new and effective ways to enhance health, stability, and prosperity across the globe. Through volunteering, our 1.2 million members make lifelong friendships that transcend political and cultural boundaries and foster global understanding and respect. As people of action, we share a strong sense of purpose. More than a century ago, Rotary pioneered a new model of service leadership grounded in person-to-person connections. Today, those connections are a network that spans the globe, bridging cultural, linguistic, generational, and geographic barriers, and shares the vision of a better world. Why do Rotarians achieve so much? We invest in relationships. We make decisions grounded in evidence. We know how to mobilize our networks to create solutions that last. And we're always learning from our experiences in projects, clubs, and careers. We know that our capacity to make a difference is larger when more people unite with us. Rotary brings together the kind of people who step forward to take on important issues for local communities worldwide. Rotary members hail from a wide range of professional backgrounds: teachers, lawyers, social workers, small business owners, artists, doctors, and writers all call themselves Rotarians. Rotary connects these unique perspectives and helps leverage its members' expertise to improve lives everywhere. The Rotary Club of Falmouth invites you to join Rotary's 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Visit us at falmouthrotary.com to learn how you can get involved.
And that was just one more example of an organization here in Falmouth that's doing good works. You know, Rotary's motto of service above self really can be applied to the many volunteers here at FCTV that bring PSAs like that, or shows like Barbara's, or the multitude of videos and informational pieces we've seen thus far tonight celebrating Community Media Day. And we've really had the opportunity to already be introduced to a wide spectrum of Falmouthites here. Well, now we're very happy to have someone who's brand new to the community, but is already immersing himself in Falmouth and really trying to get engaged and involved. So I'm thrilled to introduce Falmouth to one of our newest residents and newest FCTV volunteers, Jerry Lassos. Welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Very glad to have you here in Falmouth, and especially here in the studio.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here.
So tell us about your journey. What brought you to Falmouth, Massachusetts, and then to FCTV?
Great. My daughter graduated from the University of Colorado and ended up in Beverly, Massachusetts. So for the past 7 years, we've been coming out to visit her, and we always were attracted to this area. And then after discussing it with the wife, we decided this is the place we want to be. Of course, the beauty of the beaches and the wonderful serenity of the views that are here, but there's the indigenous component as well. And being Native American, I think it's very important for me to discover more about the Native Americans of this area. So that's going to be primarily my focus, I believe. Plus, I have a tremendous interest in baseball, so Cape Cod League is very exciting for me to be here. So that's how we got here, and we're thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. So lots of opportunities across the spectrum of activities you just mentioned.
Yes.
For you to be involved here. Before we came live on camera, you spoke to the fact that you're a teacher. You were
Yes.
a teacher by trade, and so
Yes.
really that training really gives you the opportunity to then share your experiences with every issue, from Native American issues to baseball to community media.
Very much so. And I specifically worked with American Indian students for the last 10 years or so in the Denver community. So I do have an interest in working specifically with Native Americans, but for all students. And one of the things that I have to share, and I want to encourage many students, is to realize the tremendous opportunities that are out there in terms of high-tech, cutting-edge fields. My daughter is a biomedical mechanical engineer, and she was working in Cambridge. And I like to pass on to all the students that I work with that they have the same type of ability and with the same support and motivation, we believe they can be filling positions in those fields as well.
So, we really have a lot in common, you and I, Jerry.
Yes.
I'm a fellow Denverite.
Ah,
yep,
wonderful.
Absolutely. And I don't know what brought me to Falmouth. Oh, yes, I do remember. It was Susan who brought me to Falmouth as well. So tell us, what is it about FCTV that brought you in and sucked you in the door, other than baseball?
Well, actually, we met. There was they had a booth at the farmers market, and from the moment I met Andrew and members of the staff, I've always been motivated by the idea of television and media. I started out as a journalism major at the University of Colorado, ended up in education, but I've always had that focus on media. So many of our students would produce video projects and encourage them to do like the morning broadcasts and video projects in which they were out interviewing others. Specifically with the Native American community, they were interviewing their elders and their grandparents so that they were learning about their language, their culture, and they could be involved in the sharing of their own stories.
So as a fellow Coloradoan, being away from those outcroppings of huge, the Rockies,
yes,
it's nice to be in Falmouth where the beaches are so enjoyable.
And that's the truth. I love Colorado. I love where we lived. We lived in Lakewood, Colorado. I went to the University of Colorado. I love the Buffs, go Buffs. But this is home, and it feels very comfortable, been very welcoming. I've been really pleased. My wife and I have been very pleased.
And what is it that attracted you to Falmouth?
Specifically, I think probably the beaches, because I grew up in Los Angeles,
right,
born and raised in
okay,
Los Angeles. But the beaches, I think, so it's very familiar, very comfortable in this setting. And then the people, the community members have been wonderful, and the staff here has been wonderful.
Well,
So most important question then, now that you're here, will you convert and be a Patriots and a Red Sox fan? No pressure.
Red Sox, absolutely. Patriots, I'm getting there.
All right.
Celtics, being from LA, that's going to be a tough one.
All right, well, you know what? We seek progress, not perfection, right? So
there you go.
So
There you go.
we're glad that you're at least willing and open-minded.
I am for sure.
Excellent. Well, Jerry, it's great to have you part of the FCTV community.
Wonderful.
And in a larger sense, part of the Falmouth community, and grateful that you're taking the time to share experiences with us here on this important Community Media Day.
I appreciate the opportunity, so
welcome
thank you.
aboard.
Thank you. Much
All right.
respect. Thank you.
You bet. And so our next piece, we are going to see a little bit about Horizons for Homeless Children. This was produced by our own Andrew Richards here at FCTV. So let's see what Andrew has to share with us.
My name is Megan Schaefer, and I am the Place-Based Program Director for Horizons for Homeless Children. Horizons for Homeless Children improves the lives of young children experiencing homelessness across Massachusetts and their families. We do this through access to early education, opportunities for healing play, and support services for their family. Homelessness is an issue that affects us all and affects more children than you think. 2.6 million children across the United States will experience homelessness this year. Here in Massachusetts, just this past year, more than 18,000 children under the age of 6 were homeless. Many people, when they think of homelessness, they don't think of children, and they don't think of Cape Cod. But here in Falmouth, we have both homeless children and families experiencing it right in our backyard. We work with 2 shelters in the Falmouth area who together support over 30 families and more than 40 to 50 children each and every day who are experiencing homelessness right here in our community. It's a big issue that most of us do not realize exists. It's affecting infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and kids right here. In fact, 1 in 24 children in Massachusetts will experience homelessness in their lifetime now. That means someone at your local school or place of worship that you know has already experienced homelessness. We partner with family homeless shelters here in Falmouth to design our play spaces, which are playrooms with toys and materials to help and support the children in their healing and education. In these play spaces, we bring in volunteers to provide healing play opportunities, things like Play-Doh and bubbles and board games, reading books, all things that should be a part of childhood but don't always happen when you're living in a shelter environment. These playrooms are open to children throughout the week through 2-hour volunteer shifts that are volunteers staffed to help the children learn, grow, and thrive, as all children deserve to be able to do. Horizons for Homeless Children works with the community to help support the families that we work with. We are 29% state and federally funded, but 71% funded by people in local communities and organizations who help us do the good work we do each and every week, both through monetary and donations of new toys and materials to make this all happen. If you would like to get involved and support Horizons for Homeless Children and our work here in Falmouth, you can join us at our next new volunteer orientation on Wednesday, October 23rd, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Bourne United Methodist Church. We need volunteers here in Falmouth to help support the children and families who are experiencing this issue. All you need to do is love kids and want to play, and you can make a big difference.
And we are back. We are just bringing you, consistent with the upcoming fall season, a cornucopia of segments from a variety of producers here at FCTV. And it's been great to show you, from Barbara Canelopoulos, who's been with us for 21 years, to our new friend Jerry, who's been with us just a couple of months, but is already dedicating himself to sharing interesting stories on FCTV. And now we have an opportunity to meet another FCTV member. Mary Fauser's been with us here at FCTV for a couple of years, and we're happy to have her live here in studio to share her experiences in community media. So Mary, welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And so tell us your story. What led you, not only specifically on this Community Media Day, to this studio, but in general, here to FCTV?
Well, I met Christopher Smallis 30 years ago, and immediately I learned that he had majored in communications and that he had had part-time intern jobs with one of the downtown Boston media giants, one of the television stations. And from our conversations over the years and years, I could see more and more how important how the news was presented was as important as the fact that it was accurate, because there's always the spin that comes with that. And as we both had, through our lives, traveled here and there in the United States, my family came through New England when I was 9 years old, and I decided then that I was going to make New England my home as an adult. I fell in love with the people, with the small rock walls, with the little churches, with the beautiful trees, and with the type of government that they had, where any individual could stand up in town hall and say their piece and be listened to. And that throughout my life has been a driving force of, the way I see myself in the community and also myself in the workforce. Chris and I met when we were working, both of us, for the government, and we moved to Washington, D.C. in 2005, 2006, and worked there on contracts. And it was very interesting to me to see the contracts that were signed with the different major organizations and how those actually were presented in the media, and the dollar figures and what was given to the public and what was withheld from the public. And I just found that puzzle was very interesting, and I was determined to figure it out. And you know, that impetus of making sure that things are accurate and they're right and they're according to regulation and they're in accordance with the law and that they're easy to understand for the lay person, those have really been driving tenets for me with my contract building. So when we retired, we came here, and lo and behold, there was this gem of FCTV in the middle of my new community. And came with Chris, I think the first, it was an open house, a spring open house. And they had a truck with all these buttons, and they had a TriCaster, and they had a publication room with all these buttons. And I'm really kind of not as much of a geek as Chris is, but I do love the technology, and I just love working on computers. And most of my contracting work had been concerned with buying for the government communications equipment, especially when I worked in the Pentagon. And so this was an opportunity for me to get into the nuts and bolts, really the engineering nuts and bolts of how we as a community come together and express ourselves in a way that is trackable and translucent and open for discussion. That's the open for discussion part, I think, is especially critical.
And so that's a really important factor, and it's an interesting juxtaposition that you bring up, because the filter you spoke of, the complex but necessary filter of how information gets from the federal government to the citizens doesn't exist here. So it's a real contrast, right? Because here in community media, what happens in government is what you see. And so that maybe refreshing isn't the right word, but certainly a significant change from what you're used to being involved in something as large and complex as the federal government.
Well, the detail, as they say, the devil is always in the details, and to actually be able to work in an environment with friendly, warm, informative people that are willing to and able to teach me nearly anything, and to be able to slowly grow as a person within this sector. It was such a gift. Some days I have to pinch myself because I think I'm so lucky. And thank you very much for both of you. You've been wonderful.
So it's interesting that because of your zeal, because of your passion, because of your interest, and because of Chris, you were the 2018 Volunteer of the Year awardee.
Well, and there have been, I have a storyboard for about 7 shows, but don't tell Tony because he'll want me to do them all at once.
All at one time. Right. So let's take a look at that. And before we go to the video of the of your award, thank you for coming in and visiting with us.
You're very welcome, and actually the honor is mine. It's been a wonderful experience, and both of you gentlemen have been very helpful in supporting me through this interview. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for all your great work.
I was a guest of Chris Smallus when he was coming over to an open house. He was interested in television and news and broadcasting and giving other people an opportunity to speak their mind and to have a voice in the community. And I'm very much of that kind of mind also. And so I came with him because I was curious. And I met very nice people. I just had a great time seeing there, at that point in time, brand new blueprints of their new facility that they were planning. And then I looked past the blueprints and saw that there was a audio-video facility in a truck. And that was, of course, very interesting to me. I like buttons, I like technology, I like video, audio, and the fact that it supported free speech was especially interesting to me. I had just moved up from Washington, D.C., and saw that free speech is what really makes our democracy tick. And FCTV to me seemed just the perfect doorway to a whole, new adventure in my retirement. What I've learned from the team here was that you can learn anything at any age. Age is a figment of your imagination. I learned from Bob Fenstermaker how to do proper lighting outside. I learned from Tony Sedera all of the tricks of the trade, all the techniques of staging a production. All of this was new information to me. It was a whole new world that I was learning how to live in. Working with the people that are volunteers, anything I needed to know, I was immediately helped with, and people thanked me for and appreciated my contributions. Very enlightening to me that as a new member of the community, that they could just accept me right away. I very much appreciated that.
So thank you to Mary, not only for that wonderful interview, but for her great work. Jay, we've seen over the last couple of hours now, just countless almost volunteers who really add so much richness. I say it all the time, it takes a name to make a town, but people to make a community. And what we've seen on display tonight really is not only the people that make up Community Media Day and that give the richness to FCTV that it enjoys on a daily basis, but really the people, I'll use Jim Bowen's favorite phrase, people that make up the mosaic of our community, right? They're each shining tiles with different life experiences and different professional experiences, but somehow they've come and converged here in this beautiful new Community Media Center to share their talents with people on the 3 channels that FCTV offers. So it's really something pretty special.
Well, and I agree completely. Mary is a wonderful addition to the FCTV family of member volunteers, and she's taking full advantage of all that FCTV has to offer. So it was really great having that conversation with Mary. So we have, where are we now, Troy? I lost my place.
So now we're going to get to see a couple of more videos.
Right.
One of the things that we've heard, one of the themes that we've heard, and you heard Mary talk about it actually, was the fact that FCTV provides support and educational opportunities for people of all ages, from 8 to 80 and on either end. And so one of the great things that FCTV does is offer training to young people. And we're going to see a video here in a minute that's produced by students in the FCTV animation camp. And so on an annual basis, FCTV has a camp where young people can come and learn about claymation. We remember that, the Christmas specials that they still run, the Rankin Bass Christmas specials, those claymation TV shows. FCTV does something with that for our young people. So we're going to see a video about that. And we're also going to see something about the 2018 Producer of the Year, Eileen Preston. So just 2 more opportunities to really see some highlights of the impact that FCTV has here in Falmouth.
My time machine is finally done, but I really don't want to test it alone. I'll call my friend Bob. Hey, Bob, I need you to get over here right now.
Fine, but should I be worried?
Oof, my phone.
Hello, is anyone here?
Come on, come quickly. Okay, Bob, be very careful. Everything is very fragile. Bob? Oops! Bob, what did you... Oh, no. Bob, be careful. This looks... Bob! Tacos! No!
Halt, passing travelers! What brings you to the dimension of tacos?
What are you doing in the presence of King and Princess Taco? We got teleported here by this stupid invention, and we're trying to get home. I think it's Bob's fault. Wait, no, it's definitely Bob's fault. Hey! Anyway, we're trying to get back home, and Bob has not been helping.
Can I come with you guys? Nothing to do here all day except jump in Sour Cream Lake, and I've already done that 100 times.
Sure, why not? You might be able to actually do something to help. Bob, come on. Okay! Oh my god, another weird dimension? Bob, what did you do? Look guys, it's a dinosaur! I love it so much. Can we keep it?
Moo, there's nothing to do here. Oh, Moo.
Oh, Bob, what now? Bob, have you ever seen a dinosaur at a pet store? No, because they are not pets. Now let's go.
Moo.
Okay, but Tiny's here.
Moo, there's nothing to moo here. Can I please come with you?
Hello and welcome to Solutions, a show about the Falmouth community and the struggles and challenges we face, and some locals who are trying to solve some of those problems. Today we're talking about a global... So my name's Eileen Preston, and how I found out about FCTV was when we moved here many, many years ago, 15 years ago. I saw it on TV. I just turned it on and saw the government channel, saw many of your channels, and I was interested in how you can capture so much of the town. So I started getting interested in that, but never had the time. Then later on, but it was always in the back of my mind because I really admire people who can not only have good presentation skills, which I think is very important for the economy right now. It's sort of a great skill to have in the workforce. But also to learn about the technical abilities of camera work and microphones, and that stuff always made me a little nervous. And my husband said, let's take a class in it and we'll get it. So I did take a class. I took a class with Tony Sedera. He was amazing. We took a studio production class. And at the end, the assignment was that we were supposed to make a show. So I thought that maybe we should take a show. I had thought about a woman who had started an opioid recovery program here in town, and very few people knew about it. And I thought her story was really, she was an amazing person. She'd done all this work. She deserved to have her story told, and it was such an important story. And then after that, I kind of got hooked. And I moved on to thinking about other problems in the town because, you know, God knows the world's filled with problems, but there's so many people in the town everywhere you look trying to create change. So there, you know, you think about pollution, you've got people. I found a group that was working on, first of all, the ocean plastics, which is the Woods Hole Scientists, but then there's even a young school group working on asking people to skip the straw and not pollute the oceans. Thinking about unemployment. There's an Entrepreneurs for All organization that I interviewed. That was fascinating. And then I thought about a gentleman who had bought the Elm Arch, an old historic building that Falmouth was really trying to keep. And he bought it and is renovating it, which helps the town, but also furthermore, he built it to, he designed the inn to be a hotel for children who are suffering from pediatric cancer and their families to have a vacation place here in Falmouth. So all those stories, I got hooked, and I'm still thinking about new stories all the time. I think I have learned a little bit about what a team effort it takes. There's so many people involved, and I certainly learned a lot about volunteerism, not just from the shows, but from here, the people who get together. There's a lot of volunteers that help make the show worthwhile. I learn about all the issues in the town. I really feel like I'm getting education, and I'm learning, I'm meeting interesting people who actually do interesting things. So I get to talk to them, and that really jazzes me up, actually. I love that. You can learn so much, whether it be technical or presentation or just about the townspeople, but also you're going to work with, really fabulous people, because not only are the people, the employees of FCT, wonderful and supportive, but then there's the volunteers who come in and they're so engaged. You're going to learn stuff, but you're also going to know nice people. Yeah, it's fun. It's so fun.
Eileen Preston is yet again another great example of citizens of Falmouth taking FCTV to new heights with the interest that provokes them the most. That was excellent. We have one more piece that we want to share with you before we come back and close out the evening. It's been such a pleasure. Let's introduce our final video, Troy. This one is Restoring the Coonamessett River, produced by FCTV member Allison Leshin.
Imagine when this was a wild river teeming with fish 400 years ago. The Wampanoags used those fish for food. In fact, the name Coonamessett means place of the long fish in reference to American eel, and there are also large spring runs of herring. That all changed when the European settlers came, and they began to block the river, building dams for grist mills, and then in the 1800s, some of those became woolen mills. In the late 1800s, the mills went elsewhere, but the land itself was converted to cranberry farming. And to grow cranberries, periodically sand was layered on the surface. So after 100 years, more than 2 to 3 feet of sand had built up on that surface, making former wetlands to either side of the river an upland. Sand washed into the river, making it wide and shallow and warm. And it also made the fish much more vulnerable to ospreys, herring gulls, and other predators. So to bring the river back to a more natural state, the town of Falmouth began the Coonamessett River Restoration Project, of which Phase 1 was completed in May 2018. The dam was removed and replaced by the boardwalk at Dexter's Mill Crossing. The sand was stripped away, which exposed wetland soils that had been buried for hundreds of years. And the river channel was made much more windy.
We've been measuring a lot of the responses of the river and the organisms, the animals and plants that are here in response to that restoration. I've been working a lot on the stream channel itself because I'm interested in what's happening with the fish in the system, and we've been monitoring the width of the river and the depth of the river and how much fish habitat there is. We monitor how many river herring they are, and we also monitor their behavior in response to how the river was before and how their behavior has changed.
One of the studies that I've been directing on the Coonamessett River is to study the plants that were there before and after the restoration. So before this was dug up and actively restored, we established 40 3x3 meter quadrats, and we just recorded in these quadrats the species of plants and the coverage of each plant.
It's amazing the differences that we see. We took out one of the culverts. Now what happens is the fish just swim and they can just keep going, just like a natural river. So we've turned the stream channel into being a sort of V-shaped, deep, beautiful system with lots of bends in it. The river itself now has areas that are over 3 or 4 feet deep. This is giving them an area to go so they're not as vulnerable to predation by birds. We found the rocky bottom has come back. There's a lot of aquatic vegetation that serves to hide fish from predators, also provides a place where lots of insects can grow and provide fish food. We've really increased fish passage. All of this is because we've worked at bringing the system back to behaving like a natural river.
One of the absolutely fascinating and sort of cool things about the restoration of wetlands onto these retired bogs is that you don't really need to put seeds of native plants down. Wetland plants that used to be here created seeds, and many of those seeds are still viable.
It's like a time capsule of seeds emerged after being buried for 300 years. Now we have this lush, beautiful wetland meadow that probably looks a lot like 400 years ago.
So one of the interesting things that we found was that the species diversity post-restoration increased dramatically. And we went from something like about 80 species total to more than 130 species of plants. The plants also are shifting from more upland-dominated species to wetland-dependent plant species.
One of the things that was really important in the restoration was to make the river more accessible and more usable by people in the area.
So the Coonamessett River, from Dexter's Mill Crossing all the way to Coonamessett Pond, lies entirely bordered by conservation land. Partnering with the 300 Committee, we're building a trail called the Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail. You'll be able to walk from one end to the other. Along that trail, we'll also have interpretive signs where you can learn natural history and cultural history. It's really been fun to teach the kids about herring, about wetlands, and also to show them an area where we can improve habitat to become more resilient to climate change. By the time we're done, more than a mile of river will have been restored from Dexter's Mill Crossing north to Pond 14. Recently, we held a celebration with Lieutenant Governor Polito and representatives from our many partners. This includes local and state and federal agencies, politicians, not-for-profits, volunteers, and private companies. Behind each of these logos are passionate people who work together to complete this amazing project. Thanks to them, we've already seen so many improvements in the first year and a half. It makes us really excited about the future of this river and what it will mean to our community now and in future generations.
You know, it's fitting that we end our visit here on Community Media Day with that particular video, because the restoration of the Coonamessett River, much like the success of FCTV, is a story about people coming together. It's a story about people from all walks of life who shared a common interest. In the case of the Coonamessett River, of course, it was restoring the river to its former habitat and its former beauty. Here at FCTV, the story is a little different, but in many ways the same. It's people coming together to help share the story of the Falmouth community. And for many years, for a generation now, FCTV has helped bring people together to not only provide a window into the people's business, into our government, but to provide a window into the people of our community itself. And it's been wonderful for the last couple hours with my dear friend and longtime FCTV broadcast partner, Jay Zavala, to visit with many people from the Falmouth community and hear their journey of community media and how the FCTV and the people both in front and behind the camera have impacted them over the years. And you know, that's one thing we didn't talk a lot about tonight, Jay, but probably as we close this wonderful show, it's important to also highlight the fact that every show that airs has someone in front of the camera, people like you and me that help tell the story. But for every person that's in front of the camera, there are a legion of volunteers behind it. And today we have people here in studio manning the cameras and people in the control room. And that is really the story of FCTV, because it takes all of those people together to produce a single show. And that's one of the things that's the magic of FCTV, is everybody can play every role and learn about how to produce a show from the editing all the way to being on-air talent. And that's pretty neat.
And so, because I couldn't have said it any better, I'm glad that Troy did. Thank you, Allison, for allowing us to use your piece to end this excellent program with. I want to thank FCTV, its board of directors, its CEO, Deb Rogers, and staff for inviting us to take part and participate in this wonderful celebration of Media Day and free speech. Our freedoms are precious, Troy. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and aren't you glad we're all in Falmouth? Good night.